time a gigantification was a sweeping Japan nation when along came a dude with an ultra attitude, a Kamen rider who's the greatest kicker of Japan. And of all, man, life's too short now, baby, to not talk big now, baby.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Kaiju Conversation. I'm your host, Elijah. And joining me, as always, my lovely co-host and editor.
Hello, I am Rex. You sound a little different today, good old buddy, pal Elijah.
Oh, yeah.
Did you finally go through puberty?
Well, this may come as a surprise to you,
Took
Rex,
you long
but
enough?
I am not actually Elijah. I'm an imposter.
What the hell?
I am Jurgon, which I assume won't mean anything to our listeners.
For those listening who might be a little confused, Jurgon is a friend of Elijah's and mine, and Elijah, as you can obviously tell, is absent from this recording, as the film that we will be discussing today, he might have a couple ties to that we'll bring up a bit later. But that's neither here nor there. Jurgen, what's more important is, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Rex. Thank you for asking. Nothing too much going on my end. How about you? How you been doing?
Quite good, actually. I'm kind of in Elijah's shoes at the moment, where I've been slammed with life and just being busy working and doing uni assignments and stuff like that. But, in spite of all of that, life is seemingly, in spite of all the stress, life is seemingly on the up.
All right, I was going to say
from what I hear, tomorrow is going to be a crazy day.
Yeah, I was going to say, all of that sounds pretty horrible to me. All of that sounds pretty terrible to me. But no, it's good that you're doing good, man.
It is, but it's like, it's as if, like, it's almost like you get a reward after it. You put yourself through hell, and it's like, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's good that you're doing something with yourself,
Well, it's good to hear you going, well, have you watched any Tokusatsu recently, or Kaiju films by any chance?
I've not watched that much Tokusatsu recently. I started getting back into, I'm trying to watch Kamen Rider 1971, the original one.
Oh, yeah.
And I started the series a few years ago, and I dropped it after, I think, maybe about 10 episodes or so, but I picked it back up again. I'm enjoying it so far. If I'm being honest, it's a little bit of a slog to get through, but I think it's more, it has a lot to do, I think, with the kind of episodic nature of it. It's kind of makes it a little bit difficult to get invested and to really stick with the series. But I mean, I'm kind of enjoying it. Other than that, not too much Tokusatsu or Kaiju content lately.
I know what you mean about Kamen Rider. I remember when I watched the original, I started it like several years ago, ended up dropping it after a few episodes, and then I'd come back every now and again, start again, get a few episodes in and kind of drop it. And it wasn't until like a year or so ago where I finally buckled down and started actually just watching like one or two episodes every night pretty much and got through it.
Oh, did you eventually make it all the way through?
Yeah, I've seen the whole show, and I've seen Kamen Rider V3 as well.
Oh, okay, yeah, I knew you had seen a few of the more recent ones, but I wasn't sure about the original.
How far through the original are you, actually, out of curiosity?
I'm maybe about 15 to 20 episodes through. I'll have to look to see exactly. So not far. I'm taking it slowly.
Fair enough. So you've been introduced to Hayato, right? Kamen Rider 2?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, for me, I remember it picking up for me around when the first like major villain gets introduced, like this shocker general named Colonel Zoll. Once he gets introduced around like 25, 26 episodes in, something like that, once he gets introduced, I think the show kind of starts to really pick up, and that was when I was really starting to kind of fall in love with the show, in all honesty.
I see. Well, that kind of gives me a little bit of incentive to keep going with it then, knowing there's hopefully something I can look forward to in it.
Yeah, for me, the show, I like the show the longer I watched it. Like, I absolutely loved the first episode, but after that point, the early episodes kind of weren't doing too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I love a lot of the later stuff in the show.
Well, that's good. How about you? Have you been watching any Tokusatsu lately? Something new?
Honestly, the last Tokusatsu I've really watched was for episodes that when this recording comes out, they would be out by now. But as of recording this, those episodes of KC haven't come out, and they were King Kong Lives and the Cloverfield Paradox. But outside of them, I really haven't watched any Tokusatsu or Tokusatsu like related movies or TV shows. I was going to watch a Godzilla movie today, but I didn't have time.
What a shame.
I know. It was going to be either Mothra versus or Minus Color, which I still haven't seen.
Wait, you still haven't seen Minus Color? I thought you saw that in the theaters. Oh, they didn't show it in Australia. Did they?
Nope.
Oh,
nope.
Okay. I was confused. I saw you talking about that.
-1. I saw that like 9 times.
Yeah, I remember you saw that quite a few times. Yeah, but I was thinking you had seen Minus Color. Oh, yeah. I would think very few people. I would think very few people have seen it as many times as Elijah.
Well, I know there is at least 2 people who've seen it more times than him. So, I think he's on enough crack as is. What I'm telling you is there's 3 people that need social quarantining.
Yeah, that's more or less what I was going to suggest.
Because, yeah, I don't know how you could do what Elijah did and, like, spend your whole day watching a single movie 4 times in a single day. I thought I was bad enough.
I was going to say I didn't... I don't want to be one to judge, but it doesn't exactly scream healthy behavior to me. I'm not judging, like,
right.
I'm not suggesting anything here, but
I am.
It seems...
I am.
Yeah, no, I can understand why you might.
You're not judging. I am. I'm judging him.
Well, we'll leave the judging to you then. Right?
Like, I thought I was bad on the days when I thought I was bad on the 2 times I saw the movie twice in one day. I thought that was bad enough.
That seems reasonable, at least.
I don't know. Maybe like the first time I did it, sure, because that was like the day before it came out. And so the hype was still there, and I'm like, oh my god, I need to see that again. Plus, I was doing it for the KC episode, so that I had a better idea what I'm talking about. But the other time, no, there was no excuse.
Okay, yeah. Well, while it's fresh, yeah, it makes a lot more sense. But if you've already seen it a few times, then seeing it multiple times in a day, yeah, okay. It seems a little bit, it's questionable, you could say.
Yeah. But hey, at least I'm not doing it 4 times, however many. Honestly, I'm sure there's a day where he saw it like 6 times in theaters. I wouldn't be shocked.
Well, at least you have your healthy boundaries in place, Rex.
No, I just have better boundaries than he does.
Fair.
But hey, that's neither here nor there, because really, I suppose I was actually kind of lying when I said that I hadn't watched any Tokusatsu, because there actually is one little film that I may have rewatched very recently, in fact.
Oh, really? Are you having a little bit of an internal conflict there, Rex? Might even say somewhat of a battle going on within you as to whether or not you've watched something recently, Tokusatsu related?
Yeah, it's like I'm having a battle in Tokyo, except I'm
Tokyo?
in rural Australia.
Well, how to get all the way over there?
I don't know. It's so strange.
Well, would you like sharing with us what exactly it was?
Well, for the listeners who have already read the title, and you, Jurgon, today's movie is Yuzo, the Biggest Battle in Tokyo, a 2022 kaiju film from director Yoshikazu Ishii, who had previously directed Attack of the Giant Teacher, and even prior to that had worked as a assistant director on the special effects of Millennium Godzilla films such as Final Wars, and has also worked on some Ultraman productions.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. I think I might have just seen the same thing myself, Rex.
Oh, well, that's wonderful, because that's what we're covering today.
Oh, good.
We're not covering Minus Color today, sadly.
Or Kamen Rider 71. What a shame.
I would love to cover Kamen Rider 71. I couldn't tell you about half the episode plots, but I'd love to cover them.
What do you mean episode plots? Most of them don't have a plot. Am I wrong in saying that?
or like some of them just repeat the same plots.
That's probably a bit more accurate, yeah.
I don't think you've gotten to any of the monster or the shocker episodes where they try and kidnap children, but my god, by the time I was watching Kamen Rider V3, I was sick of that plot line.
Oh no, it's already gotten to that.
Oh, so you've seen one of those? Yeah, expect to see more, and expect for them to be worse and worse every time.
Oh, lovely. That was one of the funnier episodes where they had a kid, because the kid had a dog, and the dog's name was Dummy, and through the course of the episode, Dummy, the dog, Shocker believes has taken one of their gizmos or whatever it was for one of the agents, and, well, Dummy dies. And then they have a grave for Dummy, and the kid visits the grave of Dummy, and there's a sign above the grave that says, "Here lies Dummy." I thought that was pretty entertaining. One of the better episodes, actually.
Man, I have no memory of this plot line.
I would forgive you for not
absolutely
remembering.
No memory of this.
I forgive you.
But I assume this was like during the... You said you were like around episode 15 or something. Yeah, I wouldn't remember.
Yeah, no, that's pretty far back.
Wouldn't have a clue. But yeah, to start on the film and give it a little bit of background, this film... So this is a COVID kaiju film. Obviously, I don't believe I need to introduce the coronavirus to anyone listening.
I would think
unless
not.
You're in like the year 2040 and Kaiju Conversation is somehow not completely dead, which is definitely not true. It is absolutely dead by this point. I'm probably dead. But...
No, don't go that far.
Well, you never know what'll happen.
This is true. This is true.
I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. You never know.
Is that... Never mind. I was going to say, do you think that's likely? But I suppose it could happen.
To answer your question, no, I'm not running in front of any buses tomorrow, I hope.
Okay, good. No, that's what I wanted to hear. Thanks.
But yeah, so this film was kind of conceived during the height of COVID's first wave in Japan, I believe. It was... The basic concept came up with by the director Yoshikazu Ishii, who would work with writer Gen Tanaka over the course of a week to flesh out the film. Production was actually self-financed by Ishii-san. The budget ended up being about 5 million yen, which at the time would have been about the equivalent of like 45k USD.
Oh wow.
Nowadays it's a bit closer to like 35k, but the yen has fallen from grace, you could say, in recent years.
Definitely.
Production occurred over 8 months, but bear in mind there was a pretty large gap in the middle of production. The actual filming, specifically for human scenes, really only took about 8 days. And yeah, there's not really... Post-production was about 6 to 9 months. There's not too much significant, I think, that needs to be mentioned at the moment. Outside of that, so
8 days. I mean, that makes a lot of sense now that I've watched this movie for reasons I'm sure we'll get into.
Is that a jab at the film?
No, I wouldn't do that. No, this is interesting. It's like I'm getting to listen to a podcast episode live, and I really don't have, in case the listeners haven't figured it out, I don't really have a lot to add to this. I'm just a guy who watched the movie. I'm not really a film critic or anything, so yeah, I'm not going to have a lot of important facts to add here.
I mean, hey, there's no worries about that. It's nice I think it's just nice to not be in the same echo chamber of pretentious Elijah and a slightly less pretentious but still very pretentious me.
You didn't have to go that far. I would have gone that far with Elijah, but you didn't have to. You're the one who has to sit down with him regularly. I don't have to. So it's your problem.
Yeah. You think that? I think that makes it easier for me to bully him.
Yeah,
and makes it more fun for me.
Well, I'm sure you've got a lot more dirt on him.
Oh man, there's an audio file of a previous recording from like last year of me and Elijah basically just yelling at each other for like 15 minutes straight, hurling insults. It was one of the funniest moments in both.
You better keep that one locked up.
Actually, it's pretty funny. I want to go find the audio for it sometime.
I'm sure people would be fascinated to hear that if it were somehow released. Not that it ever will be.
Yeah, I don't think he'd let me just because of how much I'd have to censor in it.
That's a good point. Yeah, probably quite a few minutes bleeped out of that 15 minutes you said there. One can only speculate.
You're probably onto something.
No, I can't imagine Elijah doing that.
Oh, well, you can't. I can.
You have that experience, I take it.
I do. He hurls insults at me all the time.
Well, if only we could all be so privileged as to be insulted by the great Elijah.
Ah, yes. If only we could all be so privileged to get harassed. I hope everyone here listening is clear that this is a joke for the record.
It's not a joke.
You should totally harass Elijah on Twitter and tell him to stop bullying me.
Yeah, it's definitely not a joke.
But with all that being said and that little blabber, yeah, I don't think I said this already on the cast, but the reason Elijah is not here today is actually because, well, he worked on the Blu-ray commentary track for this film, Yuzo. The Blu-ray was released by SRS Cinema earlier this year, and yeah, Elijah ended up interviewing Mr. Yoshikazu Ishii as well as actor Masanori Machida and kaiju suit modeler Daisuke Sato, who also directed Howl from Beyond the Fog and has worked on various other kaiju productions. And he also interviewed Willy Evans, who was responsible for the film's worldwide premiere at the Kansas City Film Festival. And so, yeah, the point I'm making is that in spite of his lack of a presence here, a lot of the information I had, credit has to go to him and his research for the film. Really, I am just taking all of his work and just profiting off of it.
Well, thank you, Elijah. We appreciate you.
We do.
That was a joke. That was a joke. I was just kidding. It wasn't really a joke. Or was it?
With that being said, I think it's about time we sort of jump into the film.
Let's do it.
So the film begins with a little flash forward into the final act of the film, or the beginning of the final act of the film, of Yuzo having a mental breakdown. And I kind of like the beginning of this, actually. Something I realized more on this is my second proper watch of the film, was that there's actually, for an indie film, there's actually some really nice touches in the filmmaking. Like here in this opening shot, it's a camera roll that turns into a Dutch tilt where the camera is kind of off balance, which is a really nice sort of way of the film to kind of help get the audience in the headspace of the main character alongside the main actor Takahito Fujita's performance in this scene as protagonist Yuzo.
A Dutch tilt. Well, that film schooling's been paying off right there, Rex.
It has. I actually the role of the camera I took note of purely because of a lesson I had yesterday.
So recent.
Yeah. So right off the bat, we kind of realized that Yuzo is a bit of an a-hole. Not gonna lie, given he tries to kidnap his ex-girlfriend's dog.
Yeah. What's with that? I was kind of surprised when I first started to watch it, and I was seeing kind of the nature of his character, and I was wondering, is this actually going to be our main character, like that we're going to be following around? Because initially, he doesn't seem entirely likable.
Right. I mean, everyone in this film is kind of off kilter in some regard. There's no real normal character in this film. Yeah, the closest to them are Yuzo's co-workers at his original job that he ends up getting fired from, as we see a little bit later when we flash back to where we really go to where this story properly begins.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. No, not many which you might consider to be normal characters in this film. They all have a little bit something going on with them.
Oh, and I guess his girlfriend is normal, but she's hardly a character and more of just love interest.
True.
But yeah, the film, we get a little bit of a peek at the normal life for Yuzo, where he's really just unlikable until he gets fired and tries to join the Galaxy Company, which, as previously mentioned, is kind of this organization of just a bunch of different, like, lucrative schemes of scamming people or stealing and making money, pretty much.
Yeah, you could put it that way. But before we got there, do you remember how we got to this Galaxy, whatever it was called, Galaxy Organization, International Space Institute Research something?
Oh,
there was something.
Are you talking about the musical number?
I am talking about the musical number, Rex, and I have to admit, when we got to that point, they were in some kind of, I don't remember what kind of, I guess it's like a bar, some type of
yeah.
I was gonna say a karaoke bar, but it's not a karaoke bar. It's something else. I forgot what it was called. But anyway, it's like a musically themed bar restaurant. And yeah, we get in there and we immediately jump into a musical number. That took me back a bit.
I will say what's cool about the musical number is it's actually, this one at the beginning here is actually done in all-in-one take, which I actually thought was quite surprising and pretty cool on this rewatch.
That is interesting. Well, I was going to comment on maybe the quality of the performance, but maybe I'll give them a little bit of leeway here since it was maybe done in one take there.
I think they did about 3 takes total. This is just the one that ended up good. From what I understand, these songs, they had organized for a different group of, like, a different singer and a different group to help out with it. But when they saw the script, they were kind of like, this is too boring, and just left the project.
Was it originally not supposed to be a musical number then?
No. It was a musical number. It's just the original people involved.
I see.
Just decided to drop the project after agreeing to work on it.
I see. I'm sorry. I didn't catch that when you first said it. So yeah. And I was kind of joking about the quality of it. Obviously, it's not meant to be taken seriously. It's meant to be played for some comedic effect, which I don't know. Did you find this funny or amusing? Really?
I didn't find it very funny on this watch. I feel like the humor for movies like this, so Yuzo is one of the sort of independent kaiju comedy films, much like what was arising in the genre following its near death after the release of films like Final Wars and Gamera the Brave.
Sure.
I think the humor in a lot of these is generally pretty hit or miss, usually more misses rather than actual hits. I will say I think Yuzo is one of the more charming films of this genre. There are a couple moments that do legitimately get some chuckles from me.
Yeah, same.
But
actually.
I don't know. For me, I'm still not like the biggest fan of this. I'm not really a comedy movie guy personally. But for what it's worth, this did at least get some chuckles from me.
Yeah, I found it to be a little bit. I mean, it took me back a little bit, but it was kind of amusing. It kind of gave me a little bit of a shock there because I definitely wasn't expecting it. But I didn't have necessarily a problem with it. I thought it was interesting that we just immediately broke out into a musical number because I definitely was not expecting that.
Right. Yeah. I will say for the comedy though, I will give it credit where credit is due. I think it was generally a bit funnier than the most recent Deadpool and Wolverine. So credit where credit is due, I guess.
I guess so.
So in some regards, it beats Hollywood. in a regard. But yeah, once we get to the Galaxy Company, we're sort of introduced to as I previously mentioned, the really off-kilter set of characters, and we kind of just spend a good chunk of this movie up until around like the hour mark, just seeing Yuzo go day to day, being introduced to these group of characters. Like we meet Hyuga, who is like an alcoholic man that steals just junk on the street. You've got the fitness instructor with a love of Bruce Lee. You've got a straight up furry in Nekojima. And yeah, there's a few other characters. We meet a fair few of them, and they're all, interesting people.
I think a good question to ask you at this time would be, Rex, what did you think of, you said his name was Hyuga or Hugo?
Hyuga.
Okay, Hyuga.
Oh, are you going to ask me about the wriggle?
Well, I have to ask you about the wriggle. It's an integral part to the plot of this movie, Rex. What did you think about the wriggle? It
does end up factoring into the climax. It was funnier on the first watch. I'll say that. I didn't find it very funny on this watch.
Yeah. I could see that it was intended to be humorous. I'm not sure how well it landed with me, but I got a smirk out of me.
Yeah, it didn't do as much for me on this watch, but I credit where credit is due. I did chuckle at it a bit first time I saw it. I will say one thing that's cool is that after Hyuga's introduction, one of the items they end up stealing is a bottle of sake or alcohol, and written on that bottle is actually the name of Norifumi Suzuki, who was actually a Japanese film director who was the mentor of Yoshikazu Ishii, whom ended up passing away a few years back actually about 10 years back in 2014.
Huh. So that's a little detail there. How'd you catch that?
But yeah, so we spend a fair bit of time just seeing a lot of the antics of the characters and just seeing them interact on the job. What came as a real surprise to me watching this film is, given its place as a COVID kaiju film, I was very surprised at how little COVID kind of factors into the movie.
Same actually. It kind of ties in a little bit more so towards the beginning, when our main character is kind of going through his job and of course ultimately gets fired from his job. But other than that, it didn't factor in nearly as heavily as I had expected it to going in.
Right, which was definitely a bit disappointing for me, because really in the film, it really only ends up being like this background element. Like there's a lot of like little gags around like certain changes in like the Japanese policy, the stock market crash, how the business owner like applying for various like company grants and all that for extra money. But like for a film that, you know, is set during the peak essentially of Japan's like first wave of COVID in April of 2020, and for being the only like really like COVID focused kaiju film, it was really surprising for me that it just doesn't do much with that. And it was kind of that was probably my biggest disappointment in originally watching the film, is that I think you could really do something interesting with like a COVID kaiju movie. Like kaiju films have historically, a lot of them have not all, but a lot of them have tackled these sorts of like big social issues. Obviously, Godzilla is a 54 is a very, very obvious example of a film tackling like a relevant social issue of the time and its country. And I mean, if you want to talk a more recent example and another kind of COVID-inspired kaiju film, honestly, the only other one I can think of that in any way tackles COVID is, interestingly enough, Godzilla -1.
You know, I can definitely understand where you're coming from that angle of kind of wishing it had a little bit more to say, kind of like a social commentary on something to do with COVID. But personally, I found it a little bit refreshing that it didn't really focus on it too much, because I was fully prepared to go into this just not interested in the COVID aspect of it at all. So the fact that it didn't really tie in very heavily into the plot in any major way, I actually found to be a bit refreshing, because I didn't really want that, if I'm being honest. Like I feel like that's kind of worn. I don't know. I'm sure some other people kind of understand what I'm saying. It's like, who wants to talk about COVID? I know we're a few years removed from it now, but even now, it just feels worn out, man.
I don't know. For me, it was kind of just like, I can see that, and I think for what it's worth, even as having it as a background element, I think like the film works. Like, it's not necessarily that the film works without it. It's just, for me personally, I would have. It feels weird to have so many, like, to name like the Kaiju Virus King, have it eat up COVID masks, but then not really do anything else with the COVID element outside of like some background events happening in the film that don't really end up influencing the film too much. It almost just feels like, well, at that point, kind of why bother? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I like I said, I understand where you're coming from. It definitely, it seems like you maybe were hoping it had a little bit more substance to it, kind of tying that into the plot. You know, and I can understand that. I mean, it's definitely not wrong to want a little more substance to the plot to tie into it, especially when it's part of the themes of the movie, but it just kind of glosses over it. So I can understand that.
Yeah.
Like it's not given too much weight.
I don't know. For me, that was probably my biggest issue with the film, is just that lack of real relevance to the social issue. It's the film is like set in the context of, really.
Yep, understandable.
But yeah, after about an hour or so of varying quality humor, some of it is legitimately funny.
There was one moment,
but for me, it does kind of. Oh yeah, what moment?
Yeah, the moment I one of the funnier moments I found to be in the film was when we got to, I believe it was the last job at the research institute that he went to, and he initially gets there, and the guy, he's restoring different little appliances and electronics, presumably for our resale.
Right.
And the guy initially, he seems pretty normal.
Yeah, the only normal guy seemingly.
Yeah, he's been running into all these weird characters, and suddenly he gets to this one guy, and he seems to be doing some sort of actual meaningful work, and he seems not crazy until we get to a little bit of a tangent on his, I believe it was his second day returning to go work with the guy again, because here he's thinking, if I have any kind of say in this, I want to be going back to work with this guy every day, because this only sane person here. And then suddenly the guy goes into a rant about politics and his grand solution to politics and the inaction in the government. He pulls out some sticks of dynamite, and it's like, yeah, that's gonna solve all the problems. So I thought that was pretty good.
Of course. I mean, hey, it solved a makeshift shotgun solved some problems for certain people around Shinzo Abe.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Yeah, but after getting introduced to all these characters and just being completely overwhelmed by his job, he goes back to the bar for another musical number where he's reminded, oh yeah, I have a girlfriend.
Yeah, at this point in the movie, I had honestly forgotten about that.
I genuinely completely forgot about. Yeah, no, likewise. I was like, oh, that's right. She exists.
Oh yeah, we saw her at the beginning. Now I'm remembering.
Yeah, no, literally. And so he goes on a date with her, but his old coworker ends up just completely, pretty fairly trashing on him in front of her, and they end up breaking up. I will say it's quite funny how she just breaks up with him on the spot like that pretty immediately.
In her defense, those were some pretty hefty details of his life that his coworker was spilling about him, where, if you heard that about someone, even if you were interested in them, those are some enormous red flags that he mentioned to her.
These are true. This is very true. But what's even more bizarre is the weird moment right after where he has in his head you see her in a very skimpy outfit before turning into a demon thing.
Yeah, what was that about?
Entirely know. It's kind of weird. There's a couple weird sexual-ish moments in the film that I find, I don't know if they're quite funny or if they're just weird and perverted,
Yeah.
That's just the shock of them. It's what am I watching?
Let's be honest here. That was, I don't want to jump to conclusions too quickly here, but that was probably the director. He just wanted a good excuse to maybe get her down into wearing as little clothes as possible.
I don't know. I don't know, but there is that other scene with the furry character Nekojima that also just has a bizarre fantasy about scantily clad woman.
Yeah, that was definitely there as well. At least in the case of that particular sequence, I could see how it kind of tied into, because they were trying to build up the weirdness of these characters and just how bizarre and quirky they were. So I could kind of see why they went there with him. I felt like it made a little bit more sense.
I think it fits a little better there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but regardless, he ends up being the breaking point for Yuzo really in the film at about the hour mark. So it's where we finally return to that scene at the beginning where he decides he's going to kidnap the girl's, his ex-girlfriend's dog to get her to talk to him, which I'm sure would be a very successful strategy had he pulled it off.
I don't see what could have gone wrong.
Yeah. But simultaneously, during all this, one of his co-workers, a man named Jimichi, whom earlier in the film we'd seen struggling with debt collectors. He ends up trying to steal money from the Galaxy Company. And the boss's brother just so happens to have found an alien and brings it there just at this time. And it ends up getting hit with a bat by Jimichi, causing everyone in the room, except for the guy who brought the alien for some reason, to combine into our monster, Virus King.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of that really makes sense, to be honest. I kind of like the little alien thing, though. It was kind of like a little, I don't know if it's like a little marshmallow puff-looking, tiny little alien that he was carrying around. I felt kind of bad when he got hit with the bat.
It's a fun little guy.
Yeah, I liked it. It was CGI, right? I'm not...
Yeah. To me, it looks like a pretty simple like model that you could create in like Blender, especially with like the way it's sort of like body like kind of morphs when it moves around.
Yeah, it's kind of mushy looking. Yeah, I like the way he caught it. Though. I found that was one of my. Well, this was actually just before he caught it because when our main character he goes to spend some time with the former boss, who is the current boss's brother, the older scientist guy he's still sticking to the mission of the Galaxy Research Institute, and he's trying to communicate and make contact with the aliens. The method that he's using when they go out into, it looks like a park, I think, and they end up in a sandbox. And how does he plan on catching the alien? Well, he's got a little basket turned over, a little stick holding up the basket, and what is he using for bait? A banana. And this is all just sitting in the sandbox. And that's supposed to catch the alien. I thought
Don't you catch aliens like that?
Well, who wouldn't? I mean, that's standard operating procedure for catching aliens, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I do all the time, you know?
All the time. How's that worked out for you?
Well, I've caught as many as he has, none.
Oh, I thought you were going to say one. I was going to say, okay. Yeah, no, none would be what I would be expecting. But no, I thought that was pretty funny. I got a good kick out of it.
Elijah's nickname is E.T., so maybe I have caught one.
You bring up an excellent point, Rex.
But yeah, in the last 30 minutes during our climax, we finally get the kaiju action promised, and it's all right. Probably the disappointment for me is the lack of any real destruction.
Same. I wasn't really disappointed because, if I'm being honest, you know, I kind of knew what I was getting into with this movie, so I wasn't totally surprised. I was hoping for maybe, you know, a little bit of miniatures, but you know, I'm not even sure if we really got any kind of miniatures necessarily.
I'm pretty sure there's like none, because from what I recall, it's pretty much all just Virus King being like composited over shots of just the city. That's really kind of it. And occasionally they'll just put like fire over it. Maybe there's a shot where they put like... I don't even remember if there's a practical explosion outside the ending. I don't even remember.
I'm pretty sure there wasn't. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't. I don't recall anything like that. Yeah, a lot of the shots that we get of the actual monster, they're kind of like... I'm sure you would know a better way to describe the framing shot, but they're kind of like lower angle shots, but you're not seeing buildings on a green screen background. A lot of times you're just kind of seeing sky behind the monster. I wish they had kind of made a little bit more use of the green screen, even just to get a little more city backdrops in there. But, you know, I obviously understand they were limited.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple shots where they do it, and it's like, the compositing isn't perfect. It's an indie film, but generally, like, having those buildings there does really add a lot to the scale. I
agree. There were a few shots that I thought were kind of impressive, given, well, maybe a little bit better than I expected, I should say, where we see our main character and he's he lassos the monster, and he swings onto it, and we get a backdrop. Well, we get a scene of him kind of hitting the monster and repelling from the monster, and I thought it looked pretty decent for what it was. I kind of wasn't expecting. Usually with these types of films, you don't get much human monster interaction with lower budget films.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely appreciated how sort of like ambitious the film kind of got near the end with the action. It's very clearly more ambitious than what its budget could allow for, especially with just all of like the interactions between the characters and the kaiju. But for what it's worth, it's not too bad. It's honestly still pretty entertaining, and like it's easy to follow along as well. And there's a couple nice little moments where little details where like the main character Yuzo, he kind of bounces off the kaiju at one point, and
right.
You see like he's obviously composited over the kaiju, but there's also like the shot of the kaiju has its like skin being the kaiju skin kind of gets pushed in, so it actually does kind of look like he interacts with it a little. Yeah, so I think like there's little details like that are really cool.
Yeah, I thought they did a pleasantly good job with some of those details. I was pleasantly surprised with some of them.
My one big issue with the compositing, I will say though, is there's a couple moments where they'll have a shot of Virus King and they'll have a shot of another character kid together. And Virus King, you can see he just a little bit of his horn will be cut off because that's the end of where it's the end of the frame. It's out of frame of the shot. So just like a little rectangle of his horn will be missing.
I didn't notice that.
I did. It bugs me. It always annoys me when it happens in like a Minoru Kawasaki kaiju film, and it annoyed me just as much here. Although in this film's case, it doesn't happen anywhere near as much. It only happens like maybe twice, maybe.
Yeah, I guess that's probably something I'm not really accustomed to noticing that much. You with your film background, you probably notice things a lot more like that than I do.
Yeah, I mean, hey, for like I said, it's at least in Yuzo's case, it's not too obvious and not as distracting.
Yeah, there were a few kind of interesting shots that they had where I'm not sure what you would call it, but the camera framing, it was like a convex where it's kind of
right.
You know what I'm talking about? I don't know the proper way to describe it. Yeah,
they've got like this. They've put like a filter over the footage that's kind of like a fisheye filter.
Yeah,
where it's like really distorted, and also it's used to make the characters whom are confronting Virus King seem almost to a similar size of him.
I was just going to agree with you. I thought it was a weird choice as well. I not necessarily bad, but I definitely wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like, I don't really think it's a bad thing. It's just a choice I find kind of odd. I don't exactly understand the thought process behind it.
Yeah, I found it a bit distracting. Like, it took me out of the film a little bit for those few scenes, because there were only a few. Like, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 of them. Like, where they had the one guy, the martial artist guy, and he went in to throw a kick against the monster, and he ended up kicking the monster. He broke his leg, but it kind of took me out of the film for a moment, because I was wondering, why did they go with that camera angle?
Right. Yeah, I didn't entirely understand why it was going for that at all.
An interesting choice.
But for what it's worth, it is a fun-looking shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, the monster goes on its rampage for a bit, but really the bulk of this sequence is our group of main characters, or whatever's left of the off-kilter team, working together to defeat the monster. They end up distracting it, and Yuzo jumps into its mouth and throws the bomb that Kido had made earlier into it.
Yeah, when the furry guy in the dog suit, when he throws the bomb to him, I couldn't help but think, that had to be he had to have a pretty good arm, obviously, to be able to throw that bomb, to this guy who's hanging off of this monster. But I was thinking, why didn't you just throw it into the mouth? Like, seems like that would be a much easier place to throw it, into the big gaping mouth of this monster, rather than to throw it to this little guy hanging off of him.
See, you've got to do that because Yuzo has to have his hero moment.
He has to have his moment. You're right.
The plot demands it.
It does.
I mean, I joke, but I generally think the script for this film is actually, pretty all right for the most part. Generally, it has some decent uses of setup and payoffs outside of the COVID element, not really contributing a lot to a film. I think generally, mostly everything that is established in the film has some sort of payoff, whether or not it's in a joke form or the bomb, it ends up actually contributing to the final act of the film.
And when you mention payoff, I'm sure you're referring to our garbage thief doing the Wriggler dance to stop the monster in its tracks so that our hero can lasso onto it. That's the payoff you're talking about, right?
That it is a payoff. It is definitely a payoff.
Yeah, so that comes back in there for a moment.
Doesn't he do it twice?
He does. He does do it twice, yes.
He wriggle dances twice.
Yeah, and I already hate how many times we've had to use the word wriggle on this podcast.
Yeah.
The Wriggler dance.
They end up defeating the monster. He explodes in what is actually a pretty cool shot or 3 shots, if I remember right, of a little maquette model exploding.
Right, and that was pretty obviously a maquette and not the suit, correct?
Right, yeah.
I assume that's fairly standard practice. You would know more than I would, but to use a maquette instead of the actual suit in an explosion like that.
Yeah, usually. Although I think I want to say MechaGodzilla 2 blows up its suit, and some Heisei Ultra shows blow up their suits. But nowadays it's pretty uncommon for the suits to... They like to preserve their suits generally nowadays more.
I gotcha. Oh yeah, we finally get to see the furry guy's face right at the end, right? He takes off his mask and he has his own little heroic moment where he breaks out of the suit. I'm sure there's some hidden meaning there.
Yeah, his own little he completes a character arc of some sort.
He does. He has his own little character arc there.
And yeah, the day is saved. Nekojima, Yuzo, and Kuroda, not Bruce Lee, ends up saving everyone that had been eaten by Yuzo through some alternate dimension space portal or something.
Yeah,
that came out of Yuzo.
Yeah, can I say about the space portal? I kind of like the little effect. Obviously it was done in some sort of CG effect or whatever, but I kind of like the little space portal effect that they had at the end, where everybody was coming back in, and everybody was coming back in through the portal, and it looked kind of nice. I liked it. Lots of colors, bright colors.
Yeah, it is a pretty nice visual. A little generic. I kind of think it's kind of looks like they looked up a YouTube tutorial or something, but hey,
probably.
I respect it, honestly. It's an indie movie. I'm not going to throw too much at it for that, Yeah,
hey, it looked nice. That's all I'm saying. It looked nice. Not like an amazing effect, but it was pleasing visually to look at.
Yeah. And honestly, I think the film generally looks, for an indie film, it generally looks okay. The lighting and color grading isn't great. There's kind of like this not day for night look to it, but it's got like this sort of dark blue look over the film that doesn't necessarily look great, but I don't think the film ever quite looks particularly bad, you know, especially for like its budget.
Well, yeah, I'll add to that.
And just like how quickly the filming was.
Yeah, what I'll add to that is just the fact that I didn't notice any problems with the color grading, or like it looks like a fairly professionally done film. Obviously low budget, but as far as low budget films, like you said, it looks pretty good. And just the fact that I didn't notice any problems, I feel like that says something pretty positive about the film.
For me, it was never like a big enough issue where it actively hurt the film a lot for me.
Right.
Like it didn't always look the greatest, but it never took me out of the film, except for like a couple moments of like the CG compositing looking a bit dodgy.
Sure. Yeah.
Like those are really the only things that like kind of took me out a bit.
Yeah, and I can see that.
But yeah, no. Following this, everyone is rescued from the portal, including the little goober space alien.
Yeah, the
Gets
little
saved by
marshmallow guy.
Masanori Machida's character.
The little marshmallow guy is saved, and he flies off in his tiny little flying saucer marshmallow ship.
Yeah, and a little epilogue. And yeah, that's Yuzo. Everyone goes back to, they've learnt whatever lessons they've learnt and go back to making money.
I was going to say, I'll be honest, I don't think they learned any lessons here. Like, who would have learned a lesson here?
I think Machida's character learned some sort of lesson about maybe don't screw with space life. Let it live on its own.
Oh yeah, he was the one who hit it with a bat, right? Or was he the head scientist guy? I'm sorry, I don't remember the names.
No. He's the brother of the boss.
Right. Okay. I got
the one that the tinfoil hat guy.
Yeah,
Machida is the name of the actor.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I don't think he learned his lesson either.
I think he learned something.
No, he was out there. Right after that, he was setting more traps, little baskets with bananas under him. He was right back at it, I'm telling you.
You know what? I can't blame him.
I mean, if it's that
it sounds
easy.
like it looks like he was having a ton of fun.
Other than those guys coming to pick on him while he was in the playground, what were they there for? They were just kind of in the movie, I guess.
God, I'm trying to remember what they were like really environmentalists or something. They thought he was like trying to hunt sparrows or something.
Yeah.
So they were like going to interrogate him. But then they realized he was just a weirdo.
Yeah, and then they couldn't get away fast enough. Went there to antagonize them, couldn't get away fast enough, and then they were gone from the movie, and we forgot why they were there.
Yeah, and that is Yuzo, the biggest battle in Tokyo. And overall, what did you think of this film, Jurgon? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Like, what do you think?
I came into it, I'll be honest, I didn't expect to like it. And I don't think I really liked it. But I didn't dislike it. And that counts for something.
Fair enough. Have you seen too many of like the indie kaiju films and all like the sort of like parody stuff like Def Kappa or Monster X Strikes Back, for example? Yeah,
I've not seen as many as you and Elijah. And I see you guys, obviously you do quite a few episodes on those types of movies, and sometimes I'll kind of hold off on listening to them until after I watch the movie. So there's a few I've yet to get around to, like Attack of the Giant Teacher, who is by the same filmmaker. I've not seen.
Likewise, actually.
Although I have it. I've been waiting to watch it for probably more than a year now. But I've seen quite a few of these types of films, just probably not quite as many as you.
Gotcha. Yeah, for me, I don't think Yuzo is my favorite example of one of these, but I would still say it's probably one of the better examples of these. I do like the film. I don't love it, but I do like it. I think it's generally a pretty alright film, like especially for an indie production of its budget. Like it generally looks pretty alright. The plot functions well. It's a fine enough script. And obviously, like, as much as I wish the Kaiju Rampage could have perhaps been a bit more exciting and had a bit more miniature destruction, and, you know, obviously I mentioned before, like, the COVID elements really don't quite come together for me. In spite of those issues, like, I did legitimately enjoy this film, and I think generally it's one of the better examples of these sorts of kaiju parodies. It's certainly better than, say, Silverfoot.
A name that need not be mentioned.
A name that dare not be said following this point.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind a lot of what you just said. It was certainly, well, to me, almost certainly not as offensive as it could have been, as some other films of this nature might be. Again, I kind of found it sort of middle of the road for this type of film. I will say also, I didn't feel like I wasted my time watching this movie. I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, no, that's actually a pretty good summary on how I feel about the film, in all honesty. It's something I enjoy, and yeah, it really doesn't do anything quite, like, offensive to me, like, either way. It's just, yeah, I thought it was just a fine enough little indie kaiju flick.
Well said, Rex. Well said.
Thank you. I basically just summarized your words.
Well, I guess in that case, I couldn't have said it better than you said it. Or the other way around.
I think you said it better yourself, in fact.
Okay, let's just stop right there.
But yeah, I guess that's more or less it to say. It's a bit of a shorter episode, but hey, it's a little bit of a different format, I suppose. A little bit of experimentation in how, you know, sort of approach the plot summary of this. And yeah, I guess I don't really have too much more else to say other than, Jurgon, is there any platforms you'd like to promote or anything?
No promotion from me. Obviously, not obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but I'm on the Kaiju Conversation Discord as my name, Jurgon. So, you know, talk to me there, whatever. I hope that this was bearable for the listeners, because obviously I have no idea what I'm doing here, but I appreciate you inviting me on. You know, it's an honor, Rex. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, hey, I've had fun talking to you.
Well, same.
You're a good lad.
Well, thank you. You're not so bad yourself.
Thank you. Well, with that being said, hi, dear listeners. I'm Rex. You can find me on YouTube at Rexino, on Twitter at Rex_Xenomorph, and on Instagram, Rex_Xeno. And as for the podcast itself, Elijah would be, I'm sure, very mad at me if I did not mention you can find us on YouTube at Kaiju Conversation, on Twitter at Kaiju_Converse, on Instagram, Kaiju_Converse. Again, we also have a Facebook, Kaiju Conversation, a website, www.kaijuconversation.com, and as Jurgen just mentioned, a Discord server. So if you want to talk to me, Jurgen, Elijah, or any other of the lovely people there, go check it out. There's also merch on the Teespring store, so you can buy a shirt with Kaiju Conversations logo on it if for some reason you want it. And yeah, I think that's really about it. There's a bit of a short episode, but hey, there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. So if that is got anything left to say, Jurgen, or should we just wrap this up?
I think we can wrap it up, Rex.
Well, with that being said, thank you for listening, everyone. And remember, life's too short to not talk big. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
We are set, we are in debt. There's nothing to sweat. Life's too short now, baby. Kaiju. Not too big now, baby. Conversation. His name's Elijah, baby. And also Rex now, baby. We love those kaiju, baby. And you will too now.